This is my review of The Chosen, Season 1, Episode 2. So I notice in this episode that the Jews refer to themselves as the children of God. Well, that actually was not something that was commonplace. It was very rare for them to refer to themselves that way. It was more common that they would refer to themselves as the children of Abraham or of Israel, not God. Now, true, in this passage, there is a Jew who refutes Jesus by saying, "We are children of God," but that was simply trying to just come back at Jesus for what he was saying. And Jesus said, "No, you're children of your father, the devil." Now, I was kind of lost on who the Eli character was in 986 BC, so even after looking it up, I was still confused. It couldn't have been Eli the priest who raised Samuel, who anointed David, because David himself, his reign started in 1010 BC. I do like the fact that they called out the tax collector as a publicanus. Those of you who have a King James version, you'll know that tax collectors are referred to as publicans. That absolutely is fitting for the time. And we also see that the Roman soldier escort of Matthew is terrified of his own commander. Yeah, that's real. There were some very brutal guys out there running those ranks because they were meant to be a brutal force. They weren't police, they were soldiers. I did love how they showed the familiarity within their own scripture. Like they make a joke about someone's hair being long like Absalom, and they tell him to watch out for low-hanging branches. Now that was a good pull. I like that one. They also call out John's youth. John is introduced in this episode, and they mention how young he is. Yeah, that's accurate. We know that John was younger of the group. Now we come to the part where Nicodemus is actually able to meet Mary after she's been exorcised of all the demons. I do like how they gave him suspicion of Mary's miracle. It is a nice touch. I've often thought about how the first few miracles of Jesus would have been regarded until it was commonplace. The way they handled it seemed feasible to me. Now they do give Matthew a bit of character building by saying he had a strained relationship with his father. Now that's not in the Bible, but it is very likely given his position. He absolutely would have been known as a Roman collaborator. But then in another scene, they still show him trying to honor his father, even though his father has no idea, showing that he has a good heart. Now, when the scene cuts back to Nicodemus and Mary, and Nicodemus is trying to get information from her as to what was going on, when he's finally revealed that he's a member of the Sanhedrin, that he's a Pharisee, she immediately goes to pull her hood over her head, and he reassures her that he's not there to reinforce the law. That absolutely would have been true. If she had known he was a religious leader at the time and he wasn't there for good reasons, he absolutely would have called her out on that and said, "Hey, you need to keep your hood up. You're in the presence of a man," that type of thing. So her response, yeah, absolutely accurate to the time. But I also love his genuine of heart where he didn't care about that. He wanted to get to the truth. I also like the hope that we see in Nicodemus, that he expresses, and not outrage. At first, when she mentioned that it wasn't him that had, freed her from the demons, given how we've demonized Pharisees in our own literature and our own movies and stuff, I expected him to be outraged. But I love the fact that he wasn't. And maybe that's just a testimony of how much we demonize those who oppose Jesus. They're regular people too, and a lot of them did come around to believing in Jesus afterward. Now we have this guy named Barnaby. I'm wondering if this is supposed to be Barnabas from later, but it still could have been a somewhat common name in that time, so it doesn't have to be, because Barnabas doesn't come around until the story of Paul really kicks into motion in the book of Acts. Now she gets confused between Passover and Shabbat, and so she sets an open seat for Elijah. That actually, yes, is a tradition of the Jews that they would have an empty seat for Elijah, just expecting him to come before their coming king comes. And we can see in this passage in the Bible where the people did expect Elijah to come. And Jesus confirms that John the Baptist was the Elijah that people were waiting for. Now, I thought it was predictable that Jesus would show up and sit in Elijah's seat at Mary's dinner because he's greater than Elijah. He's worthy of that seat. Now, the last thing I noted was Thaddeus. Now, Thaddeus absolutely is Nathaniel from the Gospel of John, and I loved what they pulled there. It was actually fairly common for people to have more than one name because there was more than one language in the area. Your name could be completely different based off of the language. So Thaddeus and Nathaniel are the same person, but in John, under the name Nathaniel, he makes a joke when Philip comes to him and says, "We have found the Messiah. It is Jesus of Nazareth." Nathaniel's response is, "Can anything good come from Nazareth?" So here in this, they're absolutely referencing that idea by having Thaddeus say, "Hey, something good can come out of Nazareth." I absolutely love that. That was a great deep pull. So as far as this episode goes, I thought it was a nice second episode, but I think the rest of you are like me and just wondering, when are we going to see more of Jesus? Isn't he kind of the point? But I know they're pacing it because they want to build it up to something greater.